Imagine stepping into a chamber humming with a dozen languages, every voice layered through advanced translation matrices. It's not just noise, it's a living tapestry of galactic diplomacy. But all ISOR sensors find their way to seat 88. Why? Because that's where the human delegate sits, silent and immovable. Now, you might be thinking, why does silence matter here? In the council, communication isn't just about words, it's about presence, timing, and what's left unsaid. That's called subtextual signaling, and in a room where even breathing rhythms are analyzed for intent, the American boogeyman's absolute stillness is a message all its own. Let me tell you, this isn't passive resistance, it's a calculated form of power. When protocols are everything legal frameworks, linguistic filters, surveillance algorithms breaking that expected flow is like throwing static into the system. The silence radiates intent, and intent in interstellar politics is as potent as any weapon. Think of it like encryption. Just as quantum ghost encryption turns information into noise unless you hold the right key, the boogeyman's silence keeps Earth's true motives locked away. Delegates guess, speculate, and even more dangerous, project their own fears onto the void. And here's the twist. In a chamber built on rules and rituals, sometimes the loudest message is the one you don't send. The American boogeyman silence is an act of protocol judicing the council's own structure as both shield and sword. Let's get to the core of human reputation in the galaxy. The term Deathworlder isn't just a sci-fi flourish, it's a technical classification. It means a species evolved on a planet so hostile that everything from bacteria to weather tries to kill you. Earth is the gold standard of death worlds. Now, you might ask, so what? Doesn't that just make humans tough? More than that, it makes them unpredictable. Most Deathworlder empires burn hot and fast. They conquer, they collapse. But humans? They're patient. They prepare. That patience unsettles the council more than any show of force. There's also the social memory effect at play. Older species remember Earth's bloody ascent wars, rebellions, near-extinction events. These stories get encoded into council data archives as cautionary tales. But unlike those empires that flared and fell, humans integrated, adapted, and crucially learned restraint. Let me give you an analogy. If Deathworlders are usually like wildfires, humanity is more like tectonic drift, slow, subtle, but world-shaping. And when the council calls their delegate the American boogeyman, it's because they see that patient, unblinking danger and it haunts their calculations. So the next time you hear Deathworlder, remember, it's not just about surviving harsh worlds, it's about how that survival shapes your politics, your patience, and the stories others tell about you. Now, let's pull back the curtain on galactic politics. The council isn't some utopian parliament, it's an arena for realpolitik, where 7 historic powers maneuver behind diplomatic shields. Trivax, Seric Union, Joral Combine, Drethi Alliance, Varkon Empire, Xynorax Collective, and the Wakari Axis. These are names that carry centuries of interstellar leverage. But what do they actually do? They play the long game using intelligence networks and bureaucratic warfare to keep rivals in check. This isn't blaster fights, it's administrative attrition. Ever heard of regulatory capture? It's when you use boring paperwork trade violations. Compliance reviews, though, kneecap your competition. Now, imagine these powers watching Earth quietly consolidate activating deep orbit platforms, upgrading to quantum ghost encryption, and reclassifying mining fleets as defense assets. These are all force multiplier small changes that dramatically increase strategic potential. And the old powers don't miss a trick. So, when Earth shows patience instead of aggression, the 7 powers get nervous. They meet in private, share intelligence, and start drafting motions. This is the Council's version of a Cold Warone fought with legislation, not lasers. Let me ask, who wins in a fight where the weapon is the rulebook? Often, it's the one who knows how to turn the rules against you, and as we'll see, that's where the boogeyman excels. Let's dive into the mechanics of a council war. You might picture starships and blaster arrays, but the real battlefield is paperwork. Motions, hearings, subcommittee reviews, these are the tools of procedural warfare. Why is this so effective? It's all about attrition. When you accuse a rival of 83 violations ranging from AI sovereignty breaches to unauthorized weapons simulations, you're not just making noise. You're forcing them to fight with time and attention, not ships. Ever heard of regulatory overload? It's a tactic where you bury your target in so many rules and forms that they can't respond to the real threat. In the council, this is amplified by translation lag and legal harmonization to technical terms that mean paperwork gets exponentially harder when you cross cultures and languages. Let me pose a scenario. If your enemy never says a word, how do you escalate? The council's answer was to keep adding charges, hoping to break the silence. But in doing so, they tripped their own system because the boogeyman's refusal to play left them with nothing to latch onto. So next time you see a 1,000-page regulation, remember, sometimes bureaucracy is a bigger weapon than any fleet. Let's talk about intimidation not as aggression, but as psychological warfare. When the human delegate finally stood, every sensor in the chamber recalibrated. Presence, in council psychology, is a measurable force. It's called kinematic dominance, the ability to command attention simply by moving. Now, you might ask, why does standing matter? In a chamber where most communication is nonverbal, every gesture is a message. The boogeyman's slow, deliberate walk to the center wasn't just movement, it was a performance. He stared down each accuser, invoking a silent confrontation, a challenge no one wanted to answer. Think of it like social resonance. When one note is struck, others vibrate in sympathy. His unblinking gaze set off ripples, claws slowed, smoke thickened, breathing patterns changed. The chamber's collective tension spiked, and that's no accident. Here's the resolution. Intimidation, when done right, isn't about threats, it's about making others question their own power. The boogeyman showed that sometimes a silent performance can break the will of even the most confident adversaries. So, next time you're in a high-stakes room, ask yourself, am I speaking, or is my presence doing the talking for me? Now, let's address the elephantor, the trivax in the room, the unexplained deaths. When Ambassador Tilzir died of total cardiovascular rupture, the council entered a new phase. Suddenly, fear became a political variable, and every delegate recalculated the cost of opposition. You might be thinking, was it an assassination? A warning? Here's where plausible deniability enters. No traceable cause, corrupted surveillance logs, and medical bots that fail at revival. These aren't just plot points, they're signals. In intelligence circles, that's called a black swan event, something so outside the norm, it rewrites expectations. The result? Domino theory in action. Drethai requests security for the first time in 60 years. Dural increases data shielding. Varkon recalls its fleet. Even if there's no evidence, the perception of vulnerability spreads faster than fact. Here's an analogy. Fear, in politics, is like a virus. It doesn't have to be real to be contagious. Once the council saw one delegate fall, every subsequent incident-night signal in a temperature sensor, exploded cruiser looked less like coincidence and more like consequence. In the end, the true weapon wasn't poison or bombs, but the invisible hand of consequence. The boogeyman never had to fire a shot. Fear did the work for him. Let's zoom in on the tech angle. Surveillance drones failed to record the boogeyman. Diplomatic encryption leapt to quantum ghost levels. And then there's the nanite side, also deeply hidden. Even advanced council analysts missed it for days. What's going on here? Two technical terms, signature management and signal obfuscation. Signature management is the art of controlling what others can detect, kind of like wearing digital camouflage. Signal obfuscation is scrambling your transmissions, so even if someone's listening, they can't make sense of what you're saying. Now, you might be wondering, is this just spy movie stuff? Not at this level. In interstellar diplomacy, tech is as much about theater as utility. If your adversary can't see you or decode your moves, paranoia sets in, and that's a force multiplier all its own. Let me give you a story. The Wakari's crystalline diplomat died after a frequency-specific resonance collapse. The council said Earth had no history of such tech until now. That's the definition of technological shadow play, using or hinting at capabilities just enough to keep everyone guessing. Resolution? Invisibility is sometimes more intimidating than firepower, and when you operate from the shadows, every rumor becomes a weapon in itself. Let's shift from tech to psychology. In a galaxy where records stretch for millennia, stories matter almost more than facts. The myth of the American boogeyman isn't just council gossip, it's a living deterrent. You might wonder, why not just confront him directly? Because narrative psychology tells us that uncertainty is more powerful than certainty. When you can't explain a delegate, When surveillance fails and silence persists, the mind fills in the blanks, usually with worst-case scenarios. There's a term for this: reputational inertia. Once an images say a silent, unflinching human takes root, it's almost impossible to dislodge. Delegates start to believe the myth. Every unexplained event becomes part of the legend. Here's the conflict. The more the council pushes against Earth, the deeper the myth grows. The resolution? Eventually, the narrative itself becomes self-protecting. No one wants to be the next chapter in the boogeyman story. So, next time you hear a rumor in a high-stakes room, ask yourself, is it an accident, or is someone crafting a legend for a reason? Let's explore the final act, deterrence through silence. After the deaths, the procedural delays, and the mounting fear, the boogeyman stands once more not during a trial, but during a mundane trade dispute. 48 seconds of silence. The message is unmistakable. I see you, I am watching. Here's where the concept of escalation dominance comes in. In military theory, that's when one side controls the pace and intensity of conflict. By refusing to speak, to explain, or to threaten, the boogeyman keeps escalation in his hands and everyone else off balance. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that just bluffing? Not quite. Silent deterrence is about credibility. The council saw consequence follow each act of aggression: no warnings, no speeches, just results. That builds a feedback loop of caution. The resolution? The conspirators withdraw. Motions targeting Earth are shelved. The galaxy realizes that sometimes the most effective defense is one that never has to be spoken aloud. So, if you ever find yourself accused, remember, sometimes the most powerful answer is silence backed by the certainty that your presence alone is enough. Let's close by asking, what does the story of the American boogeyman teach us? At first glance, it's a tale of intimidation and fear. But look deeper, and it's about the strategic use of restraint. In a galaxy obsessed with words and weapons, silence became the ultimate deterrent. There's a concept here called soft power-winning influence, not through force, but through reputation, myth, and presence. The boogeyman embodies this. He never fires a shot, never issues a threat, yet shapes council policy with every silent session. Now, you might ask, could anyone else pull this off? Not easily. This strategy only works when you've built a platform of credibility, when every delegate believes that silence is not emptiness, but a warning. Let me leave you with this. In interstellar politics, power isn't always about who speaks loudest. Sometimes, the strongest legacy is the one left in the spaces between words, in the glances, in the stories others tell when you're gone. The boogeyman still sits in seat 88, waiting, watching. His silence, that's the sentence and the lesson for every species that thinks power only comes from speaking first. Let's start with the mood in the council right after the Trivax autopsy. You'd expect answers, right? But imagine opening a locked box only to find it empty, just more questions. The medical scans from the Sarek didn't help either. Their data ended in what analysts called semantic noise. That's when information degrades into useless gibberish, like seeing TV static where you expected a picture. So, why the fear? Not war something deeper, something unaccountable. When normal rules fail and evidence vaporizes, it's like the rules of chess changing mid-game. You can't plan, you can only react. Think about it. If even the Giral Combine, with its legendary data analysts, lost their top minds in a mysterious cruiser explosion, what hope do the rest have? Their best tools pattern recognition and anomaly detection weren't enough. Now, you might be thinking, was this just bad luck, or was someone orchestrating chaos? That question haunted them day and night. So, with every new classified file and dead end, the Council's fear grew. Not of open enemies, but of something that left no traces except silence. Let me tell you a story about a man who never changed. In the heart of the council chambers, Delegate 88 sat quiet, solitary, his uniform pristine for 4 decades. Age didn't touch him. His posture didn't shift. Some said he was a relic, a constant in an ever-changing galaxy. Now, you might ask, isn't that a bit odd? It is, especially when human diplomats only offered a cryptic line. Delegate 88 operates autonomously, always has. If you're picturing a bureaucratic ghost, you're not far off. Imagine a security camera's feed. Day after day, year after year, the same figure. No emotion, no reaction. That's not just discipline, that's calculated presence, a living anomaly. In intelligence terms, he was an anomalia deviation from the statistical norm, like a chess piece that never moves but somehow controls the board. So, while the galaxy spun with rumor and dread, Delegate 88 watched, and the council started to realize sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who does nothing at all. Soon, the council's best analysts started digging. They combed through Terran records, only to hit a wall of redacted files and corrupted data. But one name kept surfacing: Echo 7. What's a redaction? That's when information is intentionally blacked out for security. Think of a book with every important word covered in ink. Corruption, meanwhile, is when data's been damaged like a scratched CD that won't play. But Echo 7 wasn't just a name. It was a pattern. No photos, no witnesses, just code tags linked to missions with violent ends and 0 survivors. Picture a ghost who leaves only closed files and missing people. And here's the Kakera dying admiral's note. If Echo speaks, it's too late. If he stands, it's already done. That's not a warning, that's a fact. So while the man in C-88 stayed silent, 5 were already dead. And for those watching, the puzzle became a nightmare. How do you fight what you can't even define? Wikari analysts turned to pattern modeling and simulation, the bread and butter of predictive analytics. They tried to map every possible move Delegate 88 could make using machine learning algorithms and scenario trees. But here's the problem. Every simulation ended the same way: death, no proof, vengeance without evidence. Out of over 2,000 methods, only 34 had even theoretical countermeasures. None were reliable. It's like playing chess against a grandmaster who always knows your next move, no matter which strategy you choose. Now, maybe you're thinking surely some defense would work, but think about it. If the threat adapts faster than you can react, your shield is obsolete before you even raise it. In the end, the simulations weren't just a tool, they became a prophecy. Council members realized their systems were built to handle predictable threats, not inevitabilities. When brute force fails, politics steps in. Mid-tier powers quietly updated treaties with Earth. Trade permissions were loosened. Weapons restrictions quietly dropped. Why? Because when unpredictability enters the room, everyone prefers to hedge their bets. It's risk mitigation, spreading out vulnerabilities to avoid catastrophe, like diversifying a stock portfolio when the market turns volatile. Human convoys began moving through previously restricted systems. No one resisted, not openly. It was a collective acknowledgement. Let's not give the quiet man a reason to stand. Now, you might ask, was this appeasement or just strategic caution? Honestly, a bit of both. Every power recalculated the cost of resistance. So, even as the council pretended business as usual, a new balance settled. But beneath it, everyone knew true peace had become a matter of calculation, not trust. Then came the Varkon Empire's mistake. They struck a human mining convoy, cloaked their warships, and left no survivors, officially blaming pirates. This is classic plausible deniability, creating a scenario where blame can't be pinned. It's like erasing your fingerprints from a crime scene, hoping no one notices the missing painting. But humans always knew. The next council cycle, the delegate remained motionless. No reaction. The Varkon ambassador smirked, confident, maybe even arrogant. Then, out of nowhere, their home moon's defense grid failed. A railgun strike erased the ambassador's entire bloodline estate. No warning, no retaliation. What's a railgun? A weapon that uses electromagnetic force to launch projectiles at hypersonic speed, silent, invisible, impossible to defend against once fired. For the Varkon, it was a lesson. Some acts invite consequences you can't predict or survive. After the Varkon fell, the Xynorax collective braced for impact. Their representative was the master of countermeasures: cloned proxies, triple redundant AI filters, daily rewired air systems. Let's clarify. A cloned proxy is a biological duplicate used as a decoy. Triple redundant AI means 3 separate artificial intelligences backstopping each other, a failsafe against hacking or sabotage. Yet, even with all that, he died inside a private memory divey cybernetic chamber designed for neural rejuvenation. No data in, no data out. Cause of death? Neural collapse from a 6 nanosecond echo at a frequency only Xynorax fetal brains recognize. How is that possible? Imagine a sound lasting less than a blink of frequency that's lethal only to your biology, unknown to anyone else. It's the ultimate assassin's tool, a vulnerability hidden in your DNA. So, all the technology in the galaxy couldn't save the collective. Sometimes, the best defense is no defense at all, just anonymity. But even that failed them. Now, only the Wakari remained. A species built on crystalline thought structures. Think of brains made of logic gates instead of neurons. Their diplomat, high-voice Ironthal, requested dialogue with Earth. Not apology, not surrender, just understanding. He received a one-line reply. Exactly 1 second later, you knew what you signed. Ironthal dug through 50 years of archives and found Article 42E, the Emergency Deterrence Mandate. This legal clause let any Death World-class species appoint a final responder, someone empowered to act without oversight in existential crises. Death World-class? That's a planet so hostile it breeds survivalists think Earth's apex predators, but with spaceships. A final responder is a legal doomsday device, human-shaped. So, Ironthal realized the clause was valid, forgotten, and it was now being enforced. Sometimes, the greatest threat is the law you signed and then ignored. Ironthal tried to escape. He left under stealth, escorted by 2 Wakari battle carriers, think flying fortresses with crystalline shielding. But 3 hours later, his ship vanished. No explosion, no distress call. A week later, the vessel was found adrift. No damage, no bodies, just uniforms folded neatly and a single message. One remains, now none. What could do that? Infiltration tech? Quantum displacement? Theories abounded. Quantum displacement means shifting matter out of sync with reality, like teleportation, but no evidence supported it. Now you might ask, was it psychological warfare or something more? The fact is, the absence of evidence became the evidence. The Wakari gambit failed. Total erasure, no noise. The lesson? When the method is invisible, the fear is absolute. The Council learned, sometimes, not knowing is the deadliest outcome of all. With all threats neutralized, the galaxy's balance shifted. Earth became a permanent Council member, no restrictions, no objections, trade boomed, security contracts tripled, and still, Seat 88 remained occupied, silent, unchanged. Why did this work? Because Echo 7 wasn't a weapon. He was a deterrent, a promise of what would happen if a weapon was ever needed. That's power projection. Influencing others not by force, but by inevitability. Think of nuclear deterrence. Mutually assured destruction keeps peace. Not because anyone wants war, but because the cost is too high. Echo 7 was the living embodiment of that principle. A human Cold War in a single chair. Rumors grew. Was he still human? Was he even alive? It didn't matter. The message was received. Do not provoke what you cannot comprehend. And so, every cycle, C-88 was filled. Not a threat, not a warning, a fact. In the end, sometimes presence alone is the most effective form of power.